Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you all to the January 14th, 2009 public hearing of the Board of Architecture Review. I appreciate everyone here in attendance this evening. My name is Derek Wingfield. I'm the chair of the board, and I'd like to ask the other two board members to introduce themselves, please.
I'm Greg Hosfield. Sorry. Rob Magrish.
Thank you, gentlemen. The board was established by zoning ordinance in 1958, and our first historic district was Gratz Park. We now have a total of 14 historic districts. The board, which is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the Urban County Council, is a part of the Division of Historic Preservation. The Preservation Office maintains a full-time staff to assist you with your projects. The board encourages and recommends that applicants use them as a resource. The Preservation Office is located at 101 East Vine Street in room 220. It is our procedure to consider applications in the order in which they are listed on our agenda. In each case, we will have a presentation by the staff and hear any additional comments from the applicant. The board will then ask questions or make comments regarding the application and then hear comments from any other interested parties. We please ask that you keep the public comment to 3 minutes. The chair will then ask board members to enter a motion. If you wish to address the board this evening, please come to the microphone and state your name and address to the public record. We ask that you also write your name on the sign-in sheet by the door so that all information may be recorded correctly. I'd also like to note the following staff approvals before we can begin our review of applications. There are certain items that the staff can approve, eliminating the necessity for all applicants to appear before the board. This evening, there are a total of 13 applications that have already been approved, and I'll read those into the record quickly. In the Aylesford Historic District at 321 Clay Avenue, rebuild existing deck. At 552 East High Street, renovate structure. In the Belcourt Historic District at 509 Russell Avenue, remove tree. In Constitution at 118 Constitution Street, replace the roof. In the Northside Historic District at 424 West 6th Street, install storm windows. There's several in 7 Parks Historic District. At 116 Arcadia Park, remove tree. 523 Arcadia Park, repair carport. 533 Arcadia Park, remove tree. And 1701 Nicholasville Road, replace sign. There are a couple in the South Hill Historic District at 126 West Maxwell Street, install plaque, and at 203 South Limestone, repair windows. And the final 2 are in the Western Suburbs Historic District at 643 West Short Street, install handrail, and at 700 West Short Street, install storm windows and doors. Again, all these applicants already have their certificates of appropriateness and can begin their projects. And we'll go ahead and start on the certificate of appropriateness applications that we're going to be hearing this evening. The first one is in the South Ashland Central Avenue Historic District. At 118 South Ashland Avenue, construct brick wall. The project, the scope of work is to remove lattice fence, install brick walls, and iron gate. The staff has recommended approval as submitted. Is that applicant present this evening? If you'd like to come forward and give us your name and address, please.
My name's Jane Baird. This is for John and Jane Baird at 118 South Ashland.
Thank you, ma'am. Have you had a chance to read the staff's findings and recommendations?
Yes, I have.
Are you in agreement with them?
Yes.
Excellent.
And want to express publicly how much we appreciate the help that Amelia has given us in this project.
Well, thank you very much. It's always nice to have feedback, especially positive feedback.
Thank you. Well, she's been instrumental. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Does anyone in the audience like here to speak on this case this evening? Any comments from the board? Hearing none, I'd certainly entertain a motion on this case, please.
In reference to case number 007-101-18-L at 118 South Ashland Avenue, I'd like to recommend that the board approve the application as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Our next case is in Woodward Heights at 711 West Maxwell Street. The scope of the project is to enlarge the rear deck. Pardon me while I flip over to that. Staff is recommending approval with Two minor conditions: that the deck extensions be held back a minimum 12 inches from the plane of the building's east wall, and that all exposed wood of deck additions be stained to match the existing decks. Is that applicant present?
The applicant is not present but has received a staff report.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Is anyone in the audience?
And is in agreement with the staff report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jadaki. Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this case this evening? Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments? Hearing none, entertain a motion, please.
In regards to case number 126807111-1, 711 West Maxwell Street, I move that the application be approved with the staff recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Magris. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next case is in the North Side Historic District at 431 West 3rd Street. Change roofing material. Staff has recommended approval is submitted. Is that applicant present this evening?
I'm Pete Cassidy. My wife and I are the applicants. I live at 431 West 3rd.
Thank you, sir. Have you had a chance to read the staff's findings and
I
recommendations?
have, and I have no objection to them.
Fantastic. Does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions regarding this case this evening? I would note that there has been a letter of support submitted with regard to this case. Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions regarding the case? Hearing none, certainly entertain a motion, please.
Who's supporting my application?
Mr. D'Angelo.
Well, good, thank you.
That's all.
Certainly entertain a motion, please. Oh, I'm very sorry.
Sorry. In reference to case number 188000431-F at 431 West 3rd, I'd like to recommend that the board approve the application as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The next case is in the Mulberry Hill Historic District at 431 North Limestone. Change door design. Staff has recommended approval is submitted. Is that applicant present?
I'm John DeHart at 431 North Lime.
Thank you, sir. Have you had a chance to read the staff's findings and recommendations?
Yes, sir.
Are you in agreement with them?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this case this evening? Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions?
No.
Hearing none, would certainly entertain a motion, please.
In regards to case number 1166043-H, 431 North Limestone, I move that the application be approved as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. See, our next case is in the Belcourt Historic District at 258 Delmar Avenue. Replace window glazing. Staff has recommended approval is submitted with a single condition that the system, the installation of the bi-glass system on all windows except for the 4 to be retained. Is that applicant present?
I'm Jack Stewart, Stewart Architecture, representing the owner, Mr. Mitri, who is also here.
Welcome.
We do agree with the recommendation.
Fantastic. I'm good.
And in passing, we have brought Terry Hackworth with Byglass as the sample and for everybody's review or information as we might have needed tonight for your perusal. So thank you for your consideration of this.
Thank you very much. Props are always welcome. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this case this evening? Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions? Okay, hearing,
Just one comment. I think that this is an example where new technologies and new solutions can be introduced to preservation projects that make things work. And we're always looking for things like that.
I concur, and I think that the recently revised guidelines have also opened the window for such innovative systems to be used.
Absolutely.
I'd like to express an appreciation to the applicant as well for exploring a little further than their previous application without just stopping, but continuing to find an appropriate answer. We appreciate that.
Any other discussion? Okay, would certainly entertain a motion for this case, please.
I'll make a motion per case 0540258-F at 258 Delmore Avenue to approve the application as submitted. Thank you. With the one exception recommendation by the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Maggers. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen. The next case this evening is in the Constitution Historic District at 118 Constitution Street. The project is to renovate rear concrete block addition. Pardon me just a second while I flip to the documentation for the case. The staff has recommended approval is submitted with a single condition that the multi-pane windows be either of True Light or simulated True Light design, and that snap-on buttons or mutton sandwich between glass are not acceptable. Is that applicant present this evening?
I'm Steve Albert with Albert & Burnworth Architecture, and I'm also representing Dilworth Investments, the owner.
Thank you, sir. Have you had a chance to read the staff's findings and recommendations? Are you in agreement with them?
Yes.
Fantastic. Is anyone in the audience here to speak to this case this evening? Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions for the applicant? Hearing none, would certainly entertain a motion, please.
In regards to case number 046001118C, 118 Constitution Street, I move that the application be accepted as submitted along with the recommendations per staff.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Maggers. Any discussion of the motion? I'd just like to say that this is a great example of adaptive reuse of a structure, and it's a great-looking project.
Oh, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sir, thank you very much. Let's see. The next case this evening is in the North Side Historic District at 441 West 2nd Street. Oops, I just went past it. The scope of the work is to replace window glazing with the bi-glass system. Let's see. Staff has recommended approval as submitted with two conditions, or one condition really. One is to replace the base and rear windows as needed with the condition that the final details are to come back to staff prior to purchase of the materials. Is that applicant present this evening?
My name is Mike Satterley. I'm the owner of the property.
Could we have your address, please, sir?
441 West 2nd Street.
Thank you very much, sir. Have you had a chance to read the staff's findings and
Yes.
the recommendations? Are you in agreement with them?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak to this case this evening? Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions for the applicant? Hey.
I'd just like to say that I want to commend you for taking on this project. That's an incredible building, and you have your work cut out for you.
Thank you. That's a well-founded comment. I think that it's a beautiful, beautiful structure, and I'm anxious to see it come back to life. Hearing no further comments, I'd entertain a motion for this case, please.
In regards to case number 168404441B, 441 West 2nd Street, I move that the application be approved as submitted, incorporating the recommendations by the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sir, thank you very much. The next case is in the Cadentown Historic District at 757 Caden Lane. The scope of the work is to demolish a structure. Pardon me while I flip over to the case. I would point out that this case was tabled at the last meeting in order for the applicant to gather additional information on the structural integrity of the building. The applicant has provided a structural engineer's report as well as a report from an industry professional regarding mold. In addition, there has been financial information regarding a loan request that has been submitted.
Structural analysis.
And structural analysis. Thank you very much. Just wanted to preface that before we got into the case here. Is that applicant present this evening?
I'm Lori Brummagem, 757 Caden Lane.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Staff has recommended approval as submitted. I would like to preface that with not too long of a speech. Just want to point out again to not just everyone here, but everyone who might be watching at home or on the internet, that one of the most valuable protections an historic district gives property owners is demolition protection. And it's specifically stated that there are only 3 instances in which a structure can be demolished within an historic district. And the burden is on the applicant to provide the appropriate documentation to support such an argument. And you have done that, and we thank you very much. The documentation you provided was quite complete. And just want to, I guess, reiterate that these demolitions are looked at very carefully, and only in circumstances when there's no hope of saving the structure or it's not economically feasible will demolition can be considered. Again, it's dictated in Article 13 to how we can approve demolitions. Just wanted to state that for the record there. Are you in agreement with the staff's recommendation for approval? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding this case this evening? Any comments or questions from the board?
Well, I'd like to echo what we said to the previous case, where we did ask for more diligence from the applicant, and they came back with all the information they needed. And I'd like to say the same thing to you. Thank you for using the process to pursue your goal and work within our guidelines. And I think everybody can agree we've met a common goal here, and that's important.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just have a comment. Last time I was here, a gentleman had come forth saying the Caden Council or the Caden Committee or whatever the name of it was, that had come forward, and he stated that they were all in agreement that the building should not be torn down. I think y'all have a copy of the petition that I went around to the neighborhood, and everybody that I talked to in the neighborhood did not know about that decision, even though they were part of that committee. So I had not found one person that was in agreement with his committee. So I just wanted to make that clear and state that his committee, I have not found that was in agreement with not tearing it down, that everybody I had talked to was in agreement with improving the neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That brings up an interesting question, staff. How do we verify the legitimacy of claims made by people speaking? I mean, if it's true what he said, how do we know? I mean, the gentleman was here before speaking for a committee of people. Is there any way to verify that what he says is true? He or she?
Not really, unless you ask for some sort of verification, some documentation, verify credentials. In this situation, it's difficult.
So,
Primarily just testimony or witnesses come in and testify contrary to what she's testifying to.
so I guess an example would be, had we had our wits about us at the previous meeting, we could have asked the gentleman, since this was a tabled case, to bring proof to back up his claims to the next meeting, which I guess we'll just keep that in mind for next time.
Or you could certainly ask for an affidavit, sworn affidavit.
Sure. Good to know.
Thank you, counsel. Okay, I would certainly entertain a motion on this case, please.
In reference to case number 02960757-D, I'd like to, at 757 Caden Lane, I'd like to make a motion that the board approve the application as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next case is at 203 South Limestone. Install awning. The applicant has requested a postponement for this case until 28 January 2009. Could I please have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion that in regards to applicant at 203 South Limestone for install an awning be postponed until January 28th, 2009 as requested.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there any discussion of the motion? I neglected to ask if there was anyone in the audience who was here to speak to this case. Good. Thank you. Hearing no more discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That ends the formal portion of our program here this evening. The next section, we have a conceptual review for 757 Caden Lane. It's to construct a house and a garage. This is a much less formal process here. It's a forum to vet ideas and yet give constructive criticism and direction for construction projects. And I dare say that this is one of the most useful procedures that, at least myself as a board member, can recommend that applicants go through. I think that many projects benefit greatly from them, and it will just help further along the process and get you your certificate of appropriateness and make a much better project. And that said, staff, if you would, give us a presentation for the conceptual, please.
Okay, lights.
Of course, to get familiar with the landscape of the present existing situation, I'll sort of span through these a little quicker, but to give you an idea of the existing scenario. And you can see in the foreground of this sort of the house, the neighboring house, which has a similar setback. Here's the existing house now, and it had a garage, as you can. This location, sort of an outbuilding. Various viewpoints of the structure. One reason I'm showing this is that you can see in this photo the house in the distance. This is the front projecting gable of the neighboring house. Sorry. Oops, this has gone a little quicker. And in this foreground, you can see a stake at this location, and also at this location, pinpointing a proposal for the garage. The proposal for the house would be in the same location. So the garage would be now immediately behind the house, and the house she proposes to be put in the same location, be brought out more. This tree actually has a split in its root system. So presently, this was taken earlier in last spring, and this tree has some decline, and she's proposing to take this out. And this area is also getting upgrades of sewer systems, and so the sewer line would run through that area anyway as Cadentown gets upgraded for their sewer systems. You can see the post laid out of a proposal to put where the garage would be located. So this would be the driveway, and you would enter it from this angle. If we can go to the images, please. Thank you. So again, this is our existing scenario of what one proposal. If we can go to the next one, please. This is our existing site plans. And this is the proposal for, you can see the existing house. She is proposing to expand this house out, have 2 projecting gables, a setback porch area, and then this would be a brick walk here, and this would be a covered breezeway leading to a garage. You come down the drive and enter into the garage at this angle. The setback will be approximately about 5 feet back, where she start her porch, and the house is here, and that's almost in line with the house over here, but there's not an image that shows that. And then she would go a bit forward, go back a little bit more. If we can go to the next one, please. She's had here are renderings of her proposal. This is the front facade of the structure. If we can go to the next one, please. And then you'll see this is another schematic of the front, and this is what the rear would look like. This is the proposal with the breezeway. This is the proposal with the garage in play and in the house that would be exposed. Oh, that's the front? Oh, it is the front? Okay, I'm sorry. This is the front. I thought that was showing the front. Okay. Okay, let's see. Here's I thought this was the breezeway. Are you sure that's not the breezeway? Because, okay, it is the front. Okay. Sorry about that. Because I was looking at the gable back here. So here's a side elevation showing the existing structure of the breezeway in the house. And again, this is a site plan. Guidelines are included for your reference. As this is a conceptual view, the staff has no findings. However, some issues to be considered are the following. Does the new building have the same number of stories, or is within 10% of the average height of the adjacent building? Is the setback consistent with the other structures on Caden Lane and Cadentown Historic District? Does the architectural details, articulation of the new construction relate in scale, rhythm, proportion, and texture to the adjacent surrounding historic buildings? Is the complexity of the building form and shape compatible with adjacent buildings? Do the proportion, directional emphasis, and rhythm of the new building reflect the predominant proportion, emphasis, and rhythm of the adjacent surrounding buildings? Does the roof of the new building relate in shape, pitch, and materials to the roof of its adjacent surrounding buildings? Are the openings compatible in scale, size, proportion to established patterns of openings in adjacent surrounding buildings? Are the materials in scale with the building in which they are located or compatible with the materials on the adjacent surrounding buildings? Is the open space adjoining the street developed in scale, character with the neighborhood? Are utilities to be placed in less visible, intrusive to the site? Is it appropriate to have an attached garage? Does the proportion, directional emphasis, and rhythm of the garage relate to the adjacent surrounding buildings? Recommendation, none at this time. And deadline for board action, there's none at this time. The applicant is here. Should you have any more questions?
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. I would just like to point out quickly that the findings that staff creates, you can come on up. The findings that staff creates in conceptual reviews aren't necessarily items that are in direct conflict with guidelines. They're just questions for you to keep in mind, but they're a pretty good indication of where some additional thought might be placed with regard to the project. That said, do you have any additional comments or questions? Again, this is very informal.
Have you the different varieties of the different homes in the area? Can I show? Okay, that second. There's I don't know if y'all have been to Caden Town, but the variety of all the different homes, the setbacks. There's there's wood, there's brick. There's that's kind of like Caden Town area. Who I went to actually with the proposals and the oops. Where do I point it to? You can just flip through it.
Almost being troublesome.
That one? Okay. So this kind of gives you an idea how many empty lots there are in Caden Town without houses on them. And then the homes that are empty that I couldn't, I didn't go and see, but just that were torn down that I haven't seen people at, and then a couple of the churches in the area. This, and then just a quick overview of the different houses. This one's brick, does not have a garage. This is wood, does not have a garage area, unless that's the garage. This is a brick structure with an attached garage facing the road. And then this is the other house with the garage facing sideways, that one. And then this is the church that's been changed into a home without a garage. Once again, brick with an attached garage, so the facing forward, kind of like what I was proposing with the breezeway, and then the attached garage driving in from the side. This how far it's set back off the road. Once again, a two-structure versus a one-structure wood. Cement driveway and a cement porch with a detached garage. This is on the corner, kind of half brick. And another house with the detached garage, one that's close to the road, the church in the area. This one sets far back off the road, and a brick structure. This one, of course, is right on the road, and several other ones. This one's the garage is in front. It was amazing how in disarray a lot of these houses were in that area. To me, as somebody, when you think of a historical society, a historical area, you think of pride and something to be. And as I was going around to these different houses, I was amazed at the shape that the community was in. And the other slideshow I had showed the 6 dumpsters full of garbage that I took out of my own backyard. And so this is on Caden Lane itself. This sets back a little ways. Let's see, garage. And this is the one on the corner with the 3 acres. So they have like 1 acre and 3 acres. So there's a variety of acreage. And the condition of that house, I think that one's empty. And then going down the street, these all kind of sit along the same frontage. That's the house next to mine. And this is the house across, how far it sets back. And and that's kind of directly across, across from that blue house. And then this is the one, mine. And then the church. And then another little house that's empty, and this one sits in between kind of two properties, way back off the road. And then this one sits right up on the road. So that's, there was, when you say about the style of the neighborhood, that's why I'm kind of like, well, what is the style of the neighborhood? I just want to improve it, and make it so there's so many different varieties in that one. It's not like downtown where you have all the nice, all the old style houses that are kind of one style that you want to keep. So I would, with that in mind, I just want to give you the different varieties of the houses in that area and the shapes and the material and stuff, and kind of direct me on, Amelia's done a great job at kind of directing me and working with me on what to do and how to do it. So
Sure. I think one of Cadentown's, that's a very recent historic district, so a lot of the problems that you've addressed and brought up this evening all took place prior to the creation of the historic district. I think so that was one of the motivations to create the Cadentown Historic District. It's also rather unique in Lexington because most of our historic districts are in downtown or very, very old suburbs of downtown. And it's a fairly rural hamlet-type setting, and there's quite a wide variety of the age of the structures and architectural style of the structures. So you're right, there's quite a bit of variety in the Cadentown Historic District, but it also makes it quite special, too, I think.
yeah.
Do you, and going back and looking at your renderings, do you sort of have a proposal A and a proposal B? Is that?
There is, well, I realized that the one with the porch all the way across the front, I wouldn't get any sunshine, and I'm a sunshine person, so I won't get any sunshine in because that faces to the east, so I shortened the porch to just the middle area. That's why that was changed.
The first, the full renderings with the clapboard on the sides, that's sort of...
That's the old
that's
one.
out.
That's out,
Okay.
yes. And it's the stick one with the porch in the middle. Yes, and that one also, the side views are correct.
Got it.
While we're talking about these,
Yeah, that one.
a common theme that I noticed in the photos that you showed us of each of the houses in the neighborhood was a simplicity. And I would urge you to consider the simplicity that I find in your first option with the porch across the front concerning the roof line, as it, just as an example. The previous option had one long line across the front and two little peaks. Yes. And then compared that to and I understand your reasoning for reducing the porch. I think that's a perfectly acceptable reason and a good thing to do. But at the same time, I would urge you to consider the simplicity of the roof line that we saw in the first option and see if there's not a way to implement that simplicity on your second design of the front facade as far as the additional peak in the middle.
Okay, I thought that made it look more even, and the three peaks, I thought it was more balanced.
I actually concur. I think my first reaction to the renderings with regard to the guidance is that it needs to be simple. There's too much going on with the roof. The roof forms need to be simplified quite a bit. Whether it's keeping, that the central gable and eliminating the two side gables, or making one gable coming off the front that incorporates all three. I'm not sure, but I think it does need, I agree, it does need to be simplified.
There were several instances in your photographs of roofs that changed pitch, and historically speaking, I bet you could find that those houses had additions over time.
Right.
Well, several, maybe not all, that led to the change of the pitch from being a similar pitch on both sides to maybe adding onto one side of the house and changing the pitch out to cover the addition, so I think you can make a strong argument for maintaining the roof and then having a pitch that comes out over the porch as you've done in this elevation. But once you add that third peak in the middle, I think you start to add a busyness that some of the other homes that we've seen don't have in the area.
Okay.
I don't think it's a very complicated design problem to solve, so I think you'll come to a solution pretty easily.
I think if you look at the historic progression of the architectural styles in the immediate area, the earliest houses are generally the smaller ones that are single or story and a half. There are a couple that are two-story, but it's sort of story and a half expanded a little bit. Looking at the photographs, and I've actually been out there. I helped at the Rosenwald School a few times when they were doing some work out there. The one thing that you do find is that these houses have developed, as it's been said, over the years. And then as time progressed and there was more money in the neighborhood, the newer houses start getting larger, and they tend to be more sort of the ranch-type houses, probably built in the 50s or early 1960s. So when you're looking at the roof lines, even though the ranch house is sort of a more contemporary style, it's sort of a long, low roof, and the earlier structures tend to have sort of these, although gabled, sort of low-pitched roofs as well. And a lot of times they incorporate the porch under the slope of the roof. So there's not a gable that you see at the front. It's actually the slope of the roof sort of extended out.
Okay.
I don't want to say there's a specific style, but it is reminiscent of the architecture that you'd kind of find in Louisiana, that kind of low roof over a porch. And, you can look at some examples of that to give you sort of an idea of what that might look like. The other thing, with the exception of some of the ranch houses and the houses that have been greatly enlarged, the original houses were sort of a small block, about the size of what is there now.
Right.
The one thing that you might be able to do is, by utilizing a slightly different roof form, is sort of give the mass of the house a little bit more definition, so that it sort of may give sort of the idea that it's been added to over the years. It's not, it's sort of, in a lot of cases, there's like a single gable that comes forward, sort of a T-plan. You might try to look at bringing a single gable forward and then keeping the rest of the roof kind of flat and low, or not flat, but sloped and low, and still achieve what you want to do with the porch and maybe the reduction of the porch. One of the houses that I'm looking at here in your packet, there's the house at 784 Caden Lane. That's sort of a story and a half and has these great little windows above the porch. I mean, that might be a way to sort of break up the roof line and bring additional light into the house, into the room. Okay. Do you have that copy? Okay.
What color is it?
It's white.
On 7 what?
784
Oh, it's right next to
Caden
mine.
Lane.
Okay.
And, you can look at the way that sort of tall section and the porch sort of work together. And, if you don't think of it as two stories, you could think of it as a single story where the upper windows almost are like clear stories, bringing the additional light into the house, but still allowing you to have the porch. There's some ideas that you could gather from that. The house directly next door at 763 does have a full front gable, but it's sort of broken down into two pieces, where the porch is the projecting part and the rest of it sets back. So, I mean, that's just a different orientation for the house. It's different than what you're proposing, but it might be a way to, as Derek was saying, sort of incorporate everything under one gable and break it up, not have it as broken up, to simplify the form, like Greg was talking about.
I do appreciate the attempt to keep the roof line lower by breaking it into pieces. So that's going to be part of this. Once we start trying to capture as many spaces as possible under one roof, that roof gets taller and taller. So,
Yeah.
you know, if it's not one big roof, then maybe it's one roof in a smaller section. But following languages that you can identify in the neighborhood, I think there were good examples of how that was done in the past.
Sort of, I don't want to shift gears too much, and we can always come back, because,
No, that's
again,
fine.
this is,
It is a one-story, by the way. It says a 1.5 story. It is a one-story. Okay.
Okay.
but there have been, there's certainly examples of attached garages in Cadentown, and we've had some other infill structures in other districts where the garages are even more attached than you're proposing. I think that in concept, what you propose is sort of a connector, walkway, a breezeway between the two. I think if, again, back to the roof, if you can bring that roof down, maybe you can consider a flat roof.
On the connector?
On the connector, that'll really help minimize the visual impact of it.
Okay.
And I think it'll help separate the house from the garage, and you're going to have a whole lot more open space, and it's going to read more like a garage and a house, but you're still going to accomplish the same thing as having a covered access to your garage.
Don't you have a lot of water issues if it's a flat roof? And water and drainage and...
Well,
Flat and
isn't
tilted
really flat.
to one direction.
Yeah, it's not really flat. There's got to be some slope for the, but
Okay.
you'll go probably from a shingled roof to a membrane.
And
Like
it really doesn't even have to be that complicated. I'd look into, a different material even to differentiate between the garage is one mass, the house, the house is one mass, the garage is a similar mass that are clearly detached by introducing this new material and this new language to connect them together with this nice little lightweight awning. I'd look at other materials like a metal roof, even something as simple and cost-effective as like a corrugated metal roof. By going to a metal roof, you can go to a more slight pitch. So even if it is a pitched roof down the length of the connection, it can be a more slight pitch, so it's not as tall a profile and not as noticeable, and then it becomes a nice, just a little connecting element, and it's not a piece of the house pulled out that
Right.
reaches out and touches the garage. So instead of having one big, lumped together
Okay.
thing, you've got a house, a garage, and a nice little lightweight connector
Okay.
between the two. And it'd be cheaper.
Yeah. Be
It would be cheaper.
Good.
The wall material, the cladding is still going to be some kind of wood siding or
It's a hardy plank.
hardy plank?
And three-dimensional shingles, yeah.
Okay.
Good choice. Not that specific brand, but cementous fiberboard.
There you go.
It'd be fiberglass, reinforced, cementitious board.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield.
I think that your basic, what you're proposing, the basic idea is fine. It's a larger house than exists in the neighborhood in general. It could set the trend. But I think that when you're looking at refining the design, just think about the mass to make it, break it down a little bit so maybe it doesn't appear quite. So, if you look at the site plan, it's virtually double the size of what was there.
Right.
So, breaking down the mass a little bit doesn't mean removing square footage, but just sort of, bringing it down a little bit. As we've been talking about, incorporating the roof structure into something that sort of is more reminiscent of what's happening with the older buildings in the neighborhood. And the one thing about your site plan, then this is really more of a question. You were talking about pulling it back about 5 feet from the existing line of the existing building. Was there a specific reason for that?
Just so it sets back. I knew I couldn't set it back, well, there's a tree that's what I'd have to remove. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you know, so there's a tree there, so I only have like this much room to move it back anyways, and without
Right.
tearing down the tree and stuff. So to preserve that, to move it back far enough so it's not like right on the road, like where it is now is. So the porch would kind of, so I'd have room for the porch. So if the porch even started where.
So the porch would actually come out to the line of the existing house,
Approximately,
basically?
yeah, approximately.
And that, Amelia, is that basically in line with the neighboring house?
It is. The existing house sits a bit forward more than the neighboring house.
Okay.
And so they're approximately in the same range.
Okay.
I can't tell you exact dimensions, but I believe they're in that ballpark.
Well, generally,
Street, their other houses have set back even further.
right,
So
right.
it just-
I mean, generally, in a historic district, if you do have to remove a structure and you're going to rebuild, you try to stay, you know, at the same location. But with the addition of the porch and the fact that it was sitting forward already of the other building line, I don't think it really is that big of an issue.
Earlier on, Lori and I discussed that, you know, the setback being very important to this area. So in her proposal, a lot of that reflects what we had discussed about keeping in line with all the other structures on Cane Town and how far they are from the street and where she would fit into that area. So
I see. Well, I think that you have a good project, and it will develop into something that you'll really enjoy.
I don't think we mentioned the garage. I just wanted to touch on it briefly. I think your design's a good one. I think one thing that, as a board, we see is, especially in garages, is a lack of fenestration on garages, a lack of openings on a wall.
On the garage?
Yeah, and not yours, but
Okay.
something that we see, especially in new garage construction. That's something that you haven't done, and I'm very glad that you haven't. Just that, you know, just having a window or some sort of opening breaks up that mass of that wall so much. And I think your garage is it's very simple. I think it's very successful where you
Thank you.
have it.
Can you speak briefly to your intent for the windows in the home? I mean, they're kind of just blank rectangles at the moment, and looking through the pictures provided of the neighborhood, there's a pretty wide variety of windows in the neighborhood. Could be a nice element that ties it back in
Yeah.
as well to its surroundings.
I'm open, as long as they're not wood. I hate painting. No.
Well, something that's you know that you can do is the guidelines allow for you know, aluminum clad windows, and they have a finish put on them in the factory that you won't conceivably have to mess with unless you want to. And those might be.
The aluminum clad ones are okay. Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And are you talking about like the?
Yeah, the pattern across the glass.
I figured there's going to be. They're big enough that they probably should have some kind of. Is that what you're talking about? Some kind of paint in them.
There's, in your photographs, there's dozens of different types of windows. Like the example over there is what's called a double hung. There's some casement windows. There's obviously sliders. There's all kinds of things going on. But had you thought about,
The style of opening, probably a crank opening this way. Just
So a
because these
casement
are
window?
Too hard. I'm thinking about getting older, and they're just real hard to lift up and push down. And plus, ventilation-wise, if they're open this way, you get more ventilation in the house.
Before you rule out double-hung windows, properly installed new windows are
They're okay.
they're even easier to open than they ever have been. So
What about
don't rule them
ventilation?
out until you try it.
Ventilation.
Ventilation, I mean, you're getting 50% of the opening. I don't know, it's pretty good. Just something to consider. I wouldn't rule it out. And even with crank-out windows, they come with light patterns to choose from. So when you're making that decision, I would look, again, like we've said with the roof lines and other things, look to the neighborhood and see if you can pick up a pattern that appeals to you or a language you'd like to maintain. I think, again, you're not going to be able to catch it all with just one swinging movement and match everything in the neighborhood because there is such a hodgepodge. But there are some common elements that I think if you can incorporate into your design, you can become a nice part of the fabric that's there in the neighborhood.
Do the windows matter to y'all, if they're crank out or double hung, double?
It creates a style, so it would be important to pick those out.
So like preferred double hung?
Well,
or
it'd be
what would be the preference?
Well, it seems that the majority of the windows in the neighborhood, and this is really just going more from your photographs, are some kind of double hung window. And I mean, I can't really tell in the detail, but they appear to be what's called 1/1 or 2/2, where you have, there's the upper part and the lower part, like on the example. Like those are 6/6 because it's got 6 panes of glass.
Okay.
So 1/1 was one big pane over one big pane. 2 would be two vertical panes over 2. Sometimes it's 2/1. I mean, depending on the house, you have 16/20. I mean, just there's dozens of different kinds. But it appears that most of the windows are either 1/1 or maybe 2/1 or 2/2.
Just to speak to that, there's a wide variety.
Oh, yes. I mean, I'm just saying that from these photographs, I mean, and then there's 6/6, there's everything else going on as well. But with the house that you're proposing, if you were to do a double hung, and I'm not saying that you would have to do that, you might look at a maybe 2/1 or 2/2 type that might sort of break up the mass of the glass.
Right.
But still give you a lot of transparency, a lot of light.
Okay.
And probably within the opening sizes that you have of a double hung type window maybe work very well for you, if that's what you decide to go with. I mean, that's up to you.
As long as they keep the wind out.
Yeah, keep the window.
I'd also, just to further that, I think pointing you to less fewer number of lights than more. I think that, like a 6/6 or more than that's going to be a little, we can encourage you to keep the design rather simple. I mean, like a 3/1 or 2/1 or 2/2 or 1/1, I think is more the direction. It's what I would encourage you to look at.
If you really want to prove your argument to us, when this comes back for final approval, I mean, if you can find all these elements in your neighborhood and say, well, I chose this window because at 2822 Liberty Road, there was a really nice 3/1 window. That's a pretty easy one
Okay.
to get past us if you can tell us why.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for us?
There will probably be a basement underneath this. That's not an issue.
No.
Okay.
The only thing that would be taken into account is how far off the ground,
Oh, you won't be able to.
as opposed to the other structures in the neighborhood. But whether you want to have a basement or not, that's up to you and your excavator.
Okay.
I think there's also an issue of windows into the basement.
There has to be several.
You'll have to give that some thought. Again, I mean, just like we've said with all the other window discussion this evening, look to your
Whatever the
neighborhood for
building
examples.
code is, right? Whatever.
Another thing, if how you're going to treat the foundation, whether it's going to be, if you're going to use a block foundation or poured. Usually we encourage people, especially if they're using a block foundation, to either have a split face block, at least on that's above the ground surface, or parge it, which is you just basically put plaster over it to hide all the joinery.
It looks like brick on the outside. So
Yeah, it looks just like masonry. Or it just looks like poured concrete.
Yeah, it just looks like poured concrete if it's parged
Okay.
over.
It's like a stucco.
Yeah, this is just stuff we're
Okay.
sort of trying to bring it to your
Okay.
attention. A lot, Amelia and Martin have done this a lot and will be able to help you
Yeah,
immensely.
she's helped a lot. So.
Staff, do you have any comments or questions?
Well, I sort of would like to apologize earlier when I was pointing out the plans and she corrected me because I didn't realize that this part was the back because I thought this was the front, and I sort of was concurring with Greg or Mr. Hosfield and Mr. Magrish about the simplicity of this proposal versus the one with the 3 gables. And so I would urge the simplicity and again, along with the board members, look at various other buildings in the area. There are the garage, there are various examples of garages and attached garages and that kind of thing. So I think there are some examples there. I think one of to fix the window issue as far as what would be the best proposal, it might be better to use this rendering and have them put, with the AutoCAD system, place windows in that so you can find examples of what that would look like. And I think keeping it in the existing, keeping it low to the ground as some of the other existing structures would be important. And I think that's all I have right now. Martin, did you have a couple of comments?
Does anyone in the audience wish to speak regarding the conceptual review? Anything else from the board? Ma'am, anything?
Thank you.
I hope we helped. Okay, if there's no additional business, would love to hear a motion for adjournment.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Is there a second to the
I
motion?
will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Maggers. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much.